Today is Cyber Monday, which means that it's the day that we celebrate all of our favorite cyber games. Unfortunately, we've already spoiled the cyberpunk epic Snatcher and hacked our way to the very end of the Cyber Shinobi, so what do we do now? Obviously, the only right answer is the underappreciated Capcom classic Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, the futuristic fighting game set in the same mech-filled universe as Armored Warriors. This is a game filled with gorgeous graphics, wacky characters, memorable endings, metal-on-metal combat, and at least one character that you'll probably recognize from other Capcom games. So turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the stories and endings for all the characters in the arcade version of Cyberbots Full Metal Madness. This is Game Over, the early years. Now, much like Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, and well, pretty much every other Capcom fighting game, each playable character in Cyberbots has its own story and ending. All you really need to know about this setup is that it's near the end of the 21st century, and Earth has been overpopulated to the point where people are now living on Earth-made space colonies. The 6 stories revolve around an evil Earth army known as the Earth Corps that appears to be experimenting with a truly heinous and potentially deadly weapon, and our heroes must do everything in their powers to stop this nefarious plan before it destroys all life on Earth. So let's go ahead and go through each of the stories one by one, starting with probably the most recognizable hero, a 21-year-old man dressed all in white named Jin. Jin's story begins about a year after the tragic death of his father. Wanting to honor his memory, Jin travels to Earth in order to take part in the Variant Armor series and learn the truth about what happened to his dad. As luck would have it, his very first fight was against a super soldier named Shade, whose memories seem a little bit scrambled, but is still able to set our hero on the right course for answers. It was while sparring with his father's former colleague Gawaine where he discovers that they were part of a security team at Earth Corps that mysteriously perished while guarding an experimental weapon. Yeah, that's bad, but what's even worse is the fact that the weapon's final brain, known simply as God, is hovering above Earth in hopes of destroying the planet once and for all. Jin defeats the weapon's brain, but not before the space station sets a course to collide with Earth and complete God's mission. And boy, if that wasn't bad enough, Shade returns to reveal that he was forced to kill both Jin's father and the rest of the squad. Oh, all this leads to one dramatic final fight, which concludes with this emotional ending. As the only female captain of the Earth Corps, Mary is a badass soldier with a soft spot for children. She starts her story on the hunt for an escaped prisoner, a green-haired woman named Arieta who runs to Gawaine for protection. It's here where Mary not only learns that Arieta has special powers, but also that the Earth Corps is secretly developing a weapon that feeds off of life force. This revelation was enough to turn the once loyal Corps member into a resistance leader, one who is looking to assemble a team to destroy the weapon and save Earth. They all end up converging on the space station, where Mary keeps GOD busy while the team disables the weapon. Everything goes as planned, and this is what happens next. From a womanizer, to a loner, to a self-centered narcissist, Santana has been called every name in the book. He's also a brave soldier who was once the proud leader of the Mars Revolution. Now, he's on a mission to destroy the Earth core, which is being met with the kind of response that you would expect. But as luck would have it, Santana meets up with his former Mars Revolution rival Shade, who reveals that the Earth core has a space station with a doomsday weapon aimed right at Earth. This puts the mission in sharp focus, forcing him to team up with Chiramaru and Tetsu in order to take down the Brain and save humanity. But as it turns out, defeating the Brain doesn't save the day, as there are brainwashed resistance fighters making their way to Earth to complete GOD's final orders. It's at this moment when we discover that the evil is using the body of a young, green-haired girl to destroy the Earth. Santana is reluctant to fight, but he knows that it's the only option he has. This is how his story ends. As we know from Jin's story, Gawaine was a former captain in Earth Corps who lost his entire squad during what he believes was a training accident. Now retired, the old man lives in seclusion and actively avoids getting into trouble. But trouble finds him as Mary attempts to arrest the former captain. This sets Gawaine on an adventure to figure out what's going on with Earth Corps, where he discovers that Arieta and others have been brainwashed and forced to work on a deadly weapon. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, he also finds out that Shade is not as dead as he was told, but is instead very much alive and heavily involved with this new plan to destroy the Earth. Gawaine chases the villain down and goes up against GOD's Brain in a truly epic fight to the death. Unfortunately, Jin shows up to avenge his father's death, which Gawaine worries will spell the end to a bunch of innocent, brainwashed victims. The old man wins, and this is what happens next. Once a prisoner of Earthcore, Arieta steals a variant armor combat suit, hides in the space shuttle, and then escapes to Earth. It's here where she almost immediately runs into Bao and Mao, a pair of siblings with some serious and understandable trust issues. Arieta warns her new friends that Earthcore is hot on her tail and planning something seriously dangerous. She's right to be concerned because Mary shows up to take our hero right back into custody. It's only after a brutal fight where Mary discovers that Earthcore has been killing humans for experiments, forcing what appears to be a sudden change of heart. As Arieta once again escapes, she meets up with Jin, who introduces her to his good friend Gawaine. Unfortunately, things do not go as planned, and Arieta is ambushed. Unconscious and probably injured, Gawaine takes her to the Resistance medical labs to see if they can help. This is where she learns the truth, that her life energy is the battery that powers the particle atomizer. Heartbroken to learn that she may be the reason that so many innocent children died, Arieta believes that now she is the only person that can end the Earthcore's evil plans. There's just one small problem. Defeating the brain didn't work this time. The particle atomizer is still fully charged and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And if that wasn't bad enough, it's currently heading towards Earth. But don't worry, Arieta has a plan. She's gonna stop the energy wave by channeling the energy through her suit and then out into space. This involves an insane battle against God that sees the little girl with green hair get her sweet, sweet revenge. And when all is said and done, this is what happens next. If anybody knows the evils of Earthcore, it's Bao and Mao. These two young siblings were orphaned after the army captured and then killed their entire family. Luckily, they were able to escape and locate a variant suit that was designed for self-defense. It's all running from the Earthcore that they locate another former captive, Arieta. The trio agrees that they need to figure out a way to destroy Earthcore, but their first concern is the health and well-being of Arieta. Yeah, she looks sick and needs to be cared for. What Bao and Mao don't realize at the time is that there are a bunch of other people looking for Arieta, including but not limited to Santana, who wants the stolen armor, and Shade, who wants to use the girl as a power source for the Doomsday weapon. Bao and Mao are fiercely protective of the green-haired girl to the point where they fly all the way to the space station in a last-ditch effort to stop the weapon from coming online. The good news is that the resistance effort works and the Doomsday weapon has been turned off. The bad news is that they are still getting energy readings off of it. The even worse news is that Earthcore true believer Mary is here to stop Mao and Bao and take Arieta back into captivity. As it turns out, the energy readings were coming from a volcano down on Earth, which is about to self-destruct and set off a chain reaction that would go directly to the core and destroy the entire planet. All that stands in the way of that happening is a battle against God high above the flowing lava. And even with no piloting experience, Bao and Mao defeat the evil brain, and this is what happens next. One thing that I've always appreciated about Cyberbots is how much of a story there is. Compared to Street Fighter and Darkstalkers, this game feels like an epic novel. There are lengthy conversations before and after every fight, fleshing out the futuristic world in big and exciting ways. It also shows the different sides of each of the characters, many of whom are simply too wrapped up in what they're doing in order to see the bigger picture. I think that's one of the reasons why these endings work so well. They feel bigger than they actually are, and that's thanks to the world building done throughout the game. It's easy to see how Capcom could continue the series with any one of these stories, so it's a shame that they didn't do more with the Armored Warriors universe. Thankfully, there is a spiritual successor that came out in the arcades and on the Dreamcast. And considering that we tackled Cyberbots on Cyber Monday, perhaps we should save Tech Romancer for Valentine's Day. What do you say? Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes almost every Monday. Now here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite cyber game? Oh, and here's an unrelated follow-up question. Did you take advantage of the Cyber Monday deals? Let me know in the comments below. In other news, look for both Electronic Gaming Monthly's best reviewed games of 2004, as well as the worst of 2004 later this week, followed by a review of Sam & Max on the Switch. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,